Hey everyone, welcome back to the FrostCast, episode 24. I want to thank you all for tuning in. It has been a little bit. We had a crazy stream with me painting, and Nova happened, and I am here with AJ and good, cool new guest here, the LFG King himself, AKERS.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously pretty frequent on War Table right now, and just trying to get as many games as possible. Obviously, leading up to WTC and all that stuff. So yeah, constantly pounding
Those three keys.
the
Do
yeah, exactly.
you want to introduce yourself? Give us how long you've been playing. What's your favorite army? Why would it be Scorn, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I've been playing since like the middle of Mark II. And yes, the first army I picked up, and I've played, and still a a joy is Scorn. That's the first army I started the game with. Played them all the way through Mark II and Mark III. They were pretty much my only like competitive army. I mean, I have quite a few, but I played them for quite some time, and it was a chore playing them through Mark II. With obviously how oppressive Crix was at that point. But at the end of Mark III, when they got really good, it was that took them to WTC last year in Belgium. Went 5-1. Our team took fourth, so that was
Heck yeah, that's
awesome.
sweet. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a faction I've always enjoyed. But like I said, now playing Orgoth this year. But I mean, I still go back to the score from time to time. Love
Yeah, because I saw you pick up a random Scorn army and just play at Nova. You're like, this is fun.
Yeah, no, I saw. Yeah, I mean, there was all two army, and I was a 75 point list ready made, so I just picked it up and played a pickup game with that. Just something to do.
So aside from Nova, what have you guys been up to in the last few weeks? I know AJ, you've been at home taking care of the kiddos.
Yeah, was alone for a month, basically. Wife went to Texas for a month. Got some painting done. Obviously not on my army because you're busy doing that, and I'm saving my War Machine painting for Chimera when they come out. So I just been finishing up some Marvel Crisis Protocol miniatures, and that's pretty much it for the hobby stuff for me.
Were you able to do that paint test?
No, I was not.
Okay.
Wife's been back, so we've been doing, marital things.
Okay. All right. Um, AKERS, you have your guy paint your guys' armies, right?
Yeah, I have a professional painter that out in Alabama. That's pretty much like I said. He's painted a bunch of my stuff for me in the past, and this will be the first time where I sent everything to him as far as my Orgoth army. He had it assembled, all that stuff, magnets put in, brought it, put it back to me within like I think it was like a month and a half. He had all of my stuff done,
Don't bring
and
up timelines because then AJ is gonna make fun of me for being a slow painter. Please, for the love of God.
but yeah, I mean the guy is phenomenal, and like I said, he's painted a lot of stuff for me, even with my Scorn army. But yeah, this will be the first time I've had one cohesive, obviously army and color scheme and all that stuff. So it looks pretty nice on the table.
It does. I saw him. He did, your painter did a fantastic job. It looked great. Um, yeah, we can go into the first big topic. Did you watch Primecast Plus 18? The newest
Uh,
one from them?
I have not yet. Like I said, I just been busy with other things, obviously with prep and whatnot. But I have not seen. I don't know if AJ has.
I have seen it. So spoilers ahead.
Yeah, I'll post them in the little chat so we can get some. We're just kind of getting some opinions on some models. Because I like to do that. See, I'm about to post AJ's favorite model actually, the balloon.
Oh, I was so disappointed in this. So I like you started at the beginning of Mark II, and I got tricked into playing trolls. And I've stuck with trolls up until basically Mark IV when I switched to Orgoth. So similar situation. But man, am I disappointed in the Brine Bloods. I'm just not impressed with any of their models. Like they totally missed the mark here by not having like pigs on top of crabs as cavalry.
Crabs.
It just crabs. And I don't know. I was all on board originally, and then as more models get released, I'm just more and more disappointed.
I'll post the other guy. I like this guy, the with the cool glowy hand thing. I don't know.
Yep. I mean, that's a good caster. It looks good. I like it, but the rest of the army is just disappointing.
Yeah, I think you're right though. Like flavor wise, they're cool. Like their aesthetic is cool. Like obviously, like people who love pirates are trolls and are gonna just play it just because the aesthetic. But like rules wise, yeah, like they fell short in a few areas for sure.
We have some Chimera from 18, which I'm a big fan of the Chimera. I know AJ as well. We'll be picking some of them up. And the ninja dude at the end.
And for me, it's the exact opposite from Chimera to Blind Bloods, where like the rules are great, but for me, like the aesthetic, I've never really been a Legion like dragon reptilian kind of thing. You told me for me, it's just like doesn't look great for me, but I know plenty of people love that style and aesthetic.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I'm not a fan of the three-headed beast, and I was a little disappointed that they're getting two heavies like that. But I'm just a fan of the snake people.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the rules, and I do like the hordes mechanic of like how their heads change and their attachments change, their overall stats. Like that's great. I wish they would have brought that a little bit into the War Machine side of it. But yeah, I mean, I like that overall mechanic and kind of feel where everything is the choices you make, make the model unique.
Yeah, and it's additional spell racks, essentially like minor spells. So
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, it changes the animus and all that stuff.
Yep. Exactly.
So it's like you get your spells, then your spell rack, and then you get like a mini spell rack from your beasts with the animus changes.
I think they are really cool. And like going back to the trolls, like I just didn't like the way I know you had brought this up before. I don't like the way the animus, like the fin changes on the heavy. The fin just looks like a giant UFO on the crab one. And I was like,
Yeah.
no, that's not it. They should have like flattened it. That was my thing.
The good old backpack.
Yeah, like a big. It's just like a big dish they just put on his back and said, "Here's your extra power." But yeah, that's our little Primecast 18. There were some cool models, and then the AKERS model in the beginning. I'm obviously a fan because it's AKERS, but like Elsa.
Mm-hmm.
I started with Ret back in the gold. I started with Ret, and they'll always be my models that I've always liked. And things that are cold, Ice King kind of makes sense. So,
Right. I mean, Shadows is pretty sweet right now.
that is what I was digging out some of the boxes and getting my lit models ready to build Shadows of Ret, and I'm excited to start getting some reps in again.
Oh yeah.
So is that what you're gonna play at Warfare?
Yeah, that's what I'll be playing in that last chance qualifier.
Okay.
I'm hoping for the
All
best.
right.
Not hoping, I'll be ready this time. I wasn't ready this time, but I'll be ready next time.
I run all day, every day.
Yeah, Thyron's impressive.
Yeah.
Oh yes, very impressive.
This is actually a perfect segue. Speaking about prep, and this is why I wanted to have you on here, AKERS, because you're really good at the prep and like recommending. You taught me a lot in like 2 weeks. Like my knowledge went from like 0 to like at least 60 out of 100 in like a matter of 2 weeks of just like picking your brain, you kind of guiding me on some things. I was wondering if you had any ideas or ways to explain what you do for con prep and what you do or would recommend to new players who want to like push their skills to that the next level.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, a big thing is your practice games. Like, obviously, play like you're at a con, right? So even in your practice games, you want to make sure that you're playing as clean as possible. You're writing those tokens down, putting it next to those models, doing your pre-measuring and your all of that stuff. Like that's once you get to that point, like it's just muscle memory at that time where like you're doing everything you need to in the correct order and all of that. And as you get at first it's going to be more awkward, obviously, right? Because it's just not how you're typically there. But the more you do it, the more fluid it's going to become, and the faster you'll get. Um, and it's not even so much like playing on clock is like, that's obviously comes later on. But even your first few games, like just you're playing without clock, just knowing your list and knowing what everything does and all of your rules will eventually help you speed up through the clock management portion of the game, because you won't have to like constantly be looking at your phone, digging through rules and rules interactions and like, what is my map, what is my rat, what is my armor, what is my defense, you know what I mean? Like that's all that stuff is going to compound obviously through the course of a game. And so the more familiar you are with like your models and what your models do, overall the more time you're going to have to actually be playing the game and trying to figure out how to win the game at that point, not just that. So that's why I tell a lot of people is like, be familiar with your models as best you can. Even sit down at night and just thumb through your list and say, all right, this is the list I'm going to bring to the con. Thumb through my list, read my rules again, because sometimes you'll have a random rule on a card somewhere that may never come up in 25% of the games that you actually play, or maybe it only comes up maybe a third of the time. But when you need it in that situation, because you're going to be playing so many games in a weekend, you're going to run across that situation probably at least once. And if you can recall that, that interaction, or if you can recall that ability, that can be the difference sometimes between a loss and a win, or even just the difference between just remembering, obviously, prolong the game. And obviously, the longer the game goes, who knows, how that game ends out. So it's just things like that. Just just familiarity with your models and just kind of overall speed of play will go a long way for sure.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Because there's like, when I first picked up Orgoth like 3 weeks ago, I played a game against you, and you're like, oh yeah, your army does this, this, and this, and I was like, I need to learn how to read. It's
Yeah.
as simple as that. Because there's like, and like the thing, I didn't do it too much. I need to get better about setting it up. Was like shield guard on tyrants and going with the light jacks. Like just using that shield guard to get that hyper aggressive can be so good. And it's like those little like the little tricks that your army will do that you don't know. You'll read the rules. You're like, okay, and then you think about it for like the second time you read it. You're like, oh, that does this with this. And if it's something you can repeat and you can take advantage of, that's going to help you push your game even further.
Exactly. Like it's one of those things where, yeah, like you said, it's not gonna happen every single game, but like even hyper aggressive, like you can get yourself into some bad situations if you overuse it. But if your opponent obviously either forgets about it, or you have a situation where you can put yourself in a better position because of it at the end of a turn, so it's always one of that's exactly a prime example of one of those rules that you're not going to use every time, but when it comes up and it can win you a game, like it's great.
I would also say, like, when you're doing your practice games, if you think you have a cute rule that you want to try out, don't even be afraid to try out. If it doesn't work, it's a practice game. Cool, you took the L on that. Now you know when not to use it. Because I've done that.
Yeah.
I did that against AJ, and I was like, cool, I'm gonna hyper aggressive right here.
Oh, bad.
I'm hyper aggressive right here. Oh, I just walked into a free ISP charge from Dusk. Thanks. Don't do that again.
Right.
That was embarrassing for both of us, actually.
Well, you know what?
I mean, that's another good point though too. Is like a good rule, obviously, even before a game, like just talk to your opponent and be like, what are your threat ranges? Like, like it's an open information game. So before you actually like commit a movement, like just say, hey, how far does this stuff threat? Like, what is the damage output of this model? And typically, like I said, all your opponents are going to basically give you the information to the best of their ability. Anyway, so it's one of those things where just if you ask, it eliminates a lot of those like negative play experience moments. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. It's just like the game, like anytime I ask my opponent anything this weekend, they're like, oh, it does this and it can also do this. Or like I'd be thinking about something. And especially with the Cephalix, they're like, just a reminder, they have hyper aggressive. If you shoot them, I can choose to move forward, kind of thing. Like everyone was very open about what the rules do and what they are.
Right. Yeah, and that's the great thing I love about this game, opposed to many other systems. Like I came from a Magic background originally, and that's the community is so much different, obviously, in Magic opposed to like wargaming, where it's like it's your responsibility to know all the rules and obviously of the game, and if you miss something, it's on you. Where this game is like all you have to do is ask a simple question, and you get as much information as you could possibly ask for. In that moment, which is super nice and eliminates a lot of that that like I said, that a lot of that those hurt feelings or like, hey, my opponent got over on me kind of thing. Like, well, if you just ask the question before you actually committed to a movement, it eliminates a lot of that problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, also coming from a Magic background, there's less in War Machine. It feels the community is less more of a gotcha community than like the Magic is, and it's more of like they want to win because they want to like play well, not because of the gotcha moments. I mean, they happen, but they happen
Exactly.
less. They happen less in War Machine because it's such open information and people are just better about playing the game with each other. The social contract that they have.
Yeah, exactly. I love that about this game is that like social interaction and that social contract between players.
I did only have one gotcha moment this weekend, and I almost got, but it was in my final game. I didn't know the Legion beast would just teleport 5 inches away. I was like, oh, well, that happened.
Yeah, it's one of those things where some of those casters, when you see it happen once, you'll never forget it.
Exactly.
Vale is definitely one of those casters where like, yeah, you see it happen once, and I mean, Legion's good for a reason this year. They're definitely a top 3 army, I think, this year. So
that game was very informative for me, just learning, because I never played against Legion. Probably, I don't think I ever have actually. I've only played as Legion like once, but I learned so much about playing against Vale in that one game.
I played Vale against you.
Did you? When?
Well, when you were playing Dusk.
Oh, okay.
And then I did all that teleporting shenanigans.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I tried to wipe that game from my memory because it's not
going. It was bad. It's just Legion's got too many tricks, and it's hard to keep up with sometimes.
There was a lot going on at all times in that game.
Well, you played arguably one of the best Legion players there is. So
yeah, let me tell you, my heart was like pounding the entire game and then near the game, everyone was just standing around the table watching me, and I was like, this is not what I need for my first IG.
Hey, I mean, you did well. You're gonna run into somebody eventually. I mean, heck, you beat Stephen King, which I'm sure we'll go through that at some point. But I mean, that's got to be a heck of a win for you too. So
yeah, I was like, that was probably one of my best games I played all weekend, and it was nice having that Masters at the end because I was able to play that list 6 more times before I went to Masters, and like so I had 6 more games to get comfortable, and the more I played that throughout the weekend, the more comfy I felt throughout the list, and the better I played throughout the weekend.
Yep, like I said, just familiarity of models, repetition. I mean, that goes a long way.
Yep, and then just like having more reps on in person, being able to like visualize the terrain, like, oh, my army does this, that's the better side for me, or oh, opponent chose that side first. How do I make this side work for me? And using the terrain to my advantage, and just playing a little safer than I normally do, and I think that benefited me long term.
I mean, Heroic is also a very forgiving caster too, for more so than the other two. Where I mean, you have an armor skew. I mean, you have a lot more. He lends himself well to a newer player basically than Kishtar or Sabrith for sure.
100%. Didn't bring Sabrith on purpose, and I played one game with Kishtar. I didn't do terrible. I was like super in a rush because I had to dip early that day, but like I definitely like immediately started picking up the rules on her, and I was like, oh, I can do this, this, and this next time. Cool.
Yeah, you also probably dropped her into like the nightmare matchup for Kishtar as well.
I dropped her to Old Witch. I was like, cool. I didn't know. Those Nayslayers are just impossible to deal with on Kishtar.
Oh yeah. Coupled with like Windstorm, and you're gonna have a bad time there.
Yeah, I think I ended up losing on scenario at least, which I guess it was expected to happen with Kishtar because if she can't do her thing, you either just lose a scenario or you die. So
yeah. She's an assassination monster for sure.
So, but that can actually lead us into like the Nova segment of this. I wanted to talk about what list showed up. Was like, is it what you expected? Is it like, did you expect other lists to show up, other armies to show up? I guess you weren't there all the days that I was.
Yeah, I mean, I still like went through. Obviously, I was still there. I got there Friday morning, so like we kind of did our own, obviously WTC team kind of did our own thing where we weren't really a part of many of the actual like, competitions and whatnot. But I mean, I was surprised that there wasn't more Storm Legion than there was. There was a lot of Orgoth, which is not terribly surprising because I think Orgoth's power level is very good right now. I mean, they're definitely one of, again, I think they're a top 3 faction in the game right now as well. But Storm Legion, I only saw like I think one.
Yeah, we had
two
it was Rich who
Legion
played
players?
Storm Legion, and then it was Rev. And I don't remember the other gentleman's name, but they were playing First Legion.
Yeah, there were more First Legion armies than there were Storm Legion armies, which was very interesting. I think Storm Legion is very strong right now in the current meta. So it was interesting to not see that. And there was also, I mean, there was, like I said, there was more, I think, more Winter Corps armies than even Storm Legion. So
Yeah, there was 2
the
Winter
other
Corps armies. I didn't see any Retribution, which I thought was surprising. No shadows, no nothing.
I mean, they were all playing a narrative.
Oh, I swear.
So they were 3 ret players playing in the narrative event. I was able to, which was kind of by stroke of luck. I sat in for one of the narrative players in the final game of the narrative because one of them had to drop out. So I played, and it was a table with 3 Orgoth players versus 3 ret players. Yeah, so
How was that?
pretty
You
great.
want to walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, so it was fun. Like I said, I didn't really play in the other 2 games leading up to that, so I knew very little about like what was going on in the overall grand scheme of the fight. But learned very quickly the beginning of that game that the invaders were not performing all that well. I could just tell by because like there was some stuff where like there was a sentinel unit. It took me like 2 turns to realize a sentinel unit had like 12 members in the unit.
Oh,
because apparently he did like save like a bunch of like people in the course of the other 2 rounds. So they got to conscript more members into their units. So almost all of the unit sizes were doubled.
gross.
On top of that, or like some models had like were just like running around with incorporeal all the time. I was like, oh well, this is just crazy. so me having to adapt obviously to like all these other crazy rules that I wasn't a part of, obviously to see any of that stuff was definitely an interesting challenge in that regard. And I intentionally took the hardest spot to defend for the team as well. There was a frozen lake bed, basically. Like we had to deploy in a way where there was this big altar that we had to sacrifice the captured prisoners that we had in the course of the game. And our win condition was to sacrifice 6 prisoners on this altar. So we had to kill one sacrifice at the beginning of each turn if one of our warcasters was on the altar at the beginning of the turn, and we had to basically over 6 turns or 7 turns kill 6 captives. And the opposing team had to just assassinate basically all 3 of our leaders within the course of the 7 turns. So yeah, I took the frozen lake bed, which was pretty difficult to defend. There was nothing there, and me not realizing what the defenders could do, they deployed on both sides of the board. I was in the middle of the table, and they deployed on both sides of me. So I was like, yeah, I am in danger for sure. So I was definitely hit pretty hard by, it was Assyria on one side and Raven on the other. So it was a little rough. But it was go ahead.
I heard you took your actors into the middle of the lake and just smacked the ice until they fell through and everything else fell.
Yeah, so it was like I said, it was basically a fighting retreat the entire time back to the altar. I knew I couldn't, like I said, there was no defensible terrain on the middle of a frozen lake bed. So I was like, well, what am I going to do? And I was just losing models, had to keep running stuff basically in. But actually, the turn before that though was even more entertaining. I was playing Sabris because we had a Kishtar player and a Harusk player. So I was like, well, I'm not going to duplicate any casters. So I'm going to play Sabris.
Yeah.
We'll have all 3 warcasters and all 3 the unique warcasters to the whole game. And I had a moment where I perditioned a jackal into this boat that was sitting on the frozen lake bed, and then my tyrant slammed the boat and slid the boat like 6 inches across the frozen lake bed, landing like next to Moros. And then my jackal like charged out of the boat and attacked and killed Moros from like 16 inches away. Something just crazy, just something just fun and gimmicky to do. And then obviously my jackal paid the price for that afterwards, but I at least was able to trade my jackal into Moros. But yeah, it was like the axers went in and basically sacrificed themselves by destroying the ice, breaking the whole lake apart, turning it back into water, obviously, and then the axers and Assyria all fell through the ice, and Assyria drowned, and my axer unit drowned as well in the process, which allowed Sabrith and my rock carriers to basically escape back to the circle, being chased by Assyria and Raven the entire way.
That's pretty cool. That's a good. That's. I looked over and I saw the cool terrain. I saw the people. I heard some people yelling every once in a while, like stuff was happening. It looked really fun.
Oh yeah, no, it was great. Like it was, like I said, I played in the narrative event, obviously too, at Adepticon. I had a lot of fun with that, and yeah. So when I was asked to play in it, obviously because I had an Orgoth army ready to go, I was like, yeah, I mean, of course, I'll definitely jump in and fill a spot. And we ended up having a lot of fun. Yeah, like my rock harriers dropped a giant like gypsy cart on top of Hemera. I just picked it up and flew over Hemera and sky bombed Hemera with a gypsy cart and killed her because she only had like 10 boxes left. So that was kind of cool. And Thyron was just a murder machine, and Thyron killed Kishtar and Harusk.
Oh my god!
Like Thyron was just basically tearing through his side of the table. And it was basically came down to myself holding the altar against Thyron and Raven. I ended up, my rock carriers killed Thyron, and then Raven with her battle group had the last turn to try to kill Sabrith with like the remnants of Thyron's army. And Sabrith lived on like 6 boxes, I think, to like sacrifice the 6th prisoner, and we ended up winning the game. But yeah, it was a crazy finish to a game for sure.
Awesome.
Oh yeah.
So because AJ wasn't there, we can talk about how the con was. Did you like the con? Would you think AJ should come next year?
I mean, the con was nice. I mean, did you make it down to the Warhammer room?
I made it down literally like Wednesday when they were setting up the Terminator, and I saw them all set up. And then after that, because I had stream set up and because of all that, I barely left that room. I think the only time I left that room was to eat lunch with you that one time, and like that was it.
I had to walk down there because people were talking about it. I had to walk down there, and it was incredible. So it looked like a mini coliseum.
Somebody said it looked like the indoor of an Eldar. It looked like almost like the indoor of an Eldar ship. And I was like, I can kind of see that.
Yeah, it was so cool, so cool. Yeah, like it was like that in itself is worth seeing.
Yeah, no, I think the TNT people were talking about like because I know they're in talks with the Nova staff, like what hotel they're gonna do next year and stuff. And I think the staff said the reason there wasn't refrigerators in your room was because they just did renovations.
That makes sense because like our key cards for our doors didn't work for the first like 2 days either. So they were trying to figure that whole mess out. So
then you got personally escorted to every room. It's kind of sweet, I heard.
Yeah, because they had to unlock our doors because their key card system didn't work for the first 2 days. So,
but sounds maybe like I shouldn't go. It doesn't sound very exciting.
I mean, it was a great time. It was definitely, like I said, this is my first year at Nova, so I didn't go obviously I didn't see the previous venue and what that was, but it was pretty nice. It was a little, like I said, obviously the War Machine stuff was all in one room, but it was very spread out too. Like the 40K guys were in their own area. They had like multiple floors, other stuff going on, like hobby stuff was on floors 1 and 2, and so it was definitely, the con sprawled through a lot of different areas, which was kind of cool.
It was
So
really good.
Have you been to Gen Con?
Yeah, I've been to Gen Con.
So what do you, because like I've been to Gen Con a few times. Compared to Gen Con, which would you pick?
I mean, I don't know how you compare anything to Gen Con. But...
Yeah, you're giving them like the best convention probably.
No, I mean, yeah. I'm just wondering because I've been to Gen Con like 4 or 5 times, so. And no, I've never been to Nova. Obviously, things didn't align this time. I was gonna go.
Well, I mean, obviously everything as far as like the gaming experience, I mean, obviously nothing compares to Gen Con, but as far as like cost wise though, there's no comparison, right? Like Gen Con is crazy expensive, and you're really not really going to Gen Con to like game, so to speak. You're there to like, just kind of walk around and do the whole experience, like just see and kind of like demo different things. At least that's what I do anyways. Like I'm not really going to like Gen Con to like compete and play games. That's not really what I'm going to Gen Con for. I'm there to like just mingle and socialize. And sure, I might play competitive game like maybe one day, like one event. But usually, I'm going around just like talking to people, playing a different game system, just trying stuff out. Seeing a bunch of stuff, buying stuff. So like this is obviously like these events are where I go to. Like I'm gonna go and like I'm gonna play. I'm gonna compete. I'm gonna get my points, and I'm gonna like do that. Obviously, it didn't happen in this Nova because we went there with an agenda, obviously with our WTC team, and we were playing and prepping for that and all that stuff. So, but typically that's what, like I said, that's what I'm doing at those cons anyways. Or opposed to Gen Con where I'm there to just like be a tourist basically.
Okay. And you say, how would you like? I know Nova. We were talking about it prior. Like Nova seems expensive because you have to buy entry into each event, and like it's DC. It's kind of expensive between food and just being in DC. Would you say the cost is worth it? Maybe for some people.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely. The cost is definitely worth it. I mean, you're sure like it's probably a little more expensive than like your average con because obviously but I mean that's not necessarily anything new to like Adepticon. It's kind of the same thing, right? Where you're still paying for all of your events. You're still you got your hotel fees. I mean, even like Adepticon and whatnot, like you still it's a very similar setup to Nova anyway. So if you're familiar and you're like a regular kind of con goer, I mean, you kind of learn to expect that. But obviously, like I said, if you're not as familiar with it, it may look that way to an outside observer. But for someone that's that does this quite regularly, that's nothing really that new.
Good information. Yeah, this was my first Nova as well. I heard not the only thing I've heard about last year's was like the food situation wasn't as good. That was like the biggest gripe for people. Like I don't know the details. I'm not gonna talk on it too much, but people said this year was definitely a good step in the direction, and I had a blast. I think it was the most informative weekend I've been to in a long time.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't even think I had that. I grabbed a sub. I think that one for lunch that one time. But every other time we would just walk down the street, that main strip, and just like found a restaurant to eat at. That's what we did. I don't think we ate actually in the hall at all. We were just like said, just wandering out and going downtown DC to find something to eat, which was like that's part of the fun of traveling. Is just going to different restaurants and just trying new stuff and doing that. So.
Yeah, I think the hotel staff was super chill about like bringing in outside food. I know, like, I think that somewhere in the rules it said do not bring outside food in, but like a ton of people like literally went out, grabbed food from down the street, brought it back inside of the tables and eat. That not just War Machine, like every event, I saw tables like Star Wars Legion, AOS, 40K, all had food from outside, and it was like I'm sure the hotel is at the point where they're like, we made so much money from the people who didn't leave, we don't care anymore.
Yeah, well, I've in every con that I've like said that I've ever been to, I've never heard of a situation where there has been a problem with that. I mean, even like said, I feel like it's posted, but like I've never heard of an instance of anyone actually ever enforcing that. But I mean, as long as you're, not like I'm gonna leave all these pizza boxes stacked on the table for somebody else to clean up.
Yeah, like be a decent human being.
Yeah, as long as you're taking care of it and being respectful about it, I don't think it's ever going to be a problem.
Cool. And then, are you going to Warfare Weekend?
I am planning to currently. I mean, I went the last couple of years, so the only issue with that being is like because WTC is so much later this year than it has been in previous years that I'll be back from like Denmark maybe a week or two before Warfare. So that timeline, that turnaround might be a bit difficult, but as of right now, that's the plan. But we'll see how that happens when I'm after I get back from Denmark.
Yeah, if you win WCC, I got you. I understand.
Man, I guess I sure hope. That's the hope. I mean, everyone is going. Obviously, you want that to happen, but I mean, yeah, that would be amazing. That would be amazing.
That would be dope. So it's in Denmark this year?
Yep, it's in Denmark.
Hopefully you aren't in like bomb shelters like you were. You said you were in Belgium.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely interesting. The Belgium venue was, and then we've been there before. Obviously, that was my first experience, obviously with WTC, and it was definitely an interesting environment. This year, it seems like it should be like since it's like the airport is in the hotel, so the venue, everything is like right there as you basically land. So we don't have to like take a train anywhere or any of that. So, from what I've heard, that this is definitely a pretty nice. Like I said, people that have been to this venue in the past really enjoy it, and it's definitely pretty nice. So I'm super excited to see what this holds as well. But traveling around even in Belgium was so much fun too, seeing Bruges and a lot of that other stuff too. Just being doing that a couple of days of being a tourist was really nice, and that's kind of what we're doing again this year is just kind of seeing the sights a little bit, and then obviously Friday night getting down to brass tacks, playing a few games, and getting ready for Saturday.
Nice. That sounds like it's gonna be a lot of fun. Well,
Oh yes.
I'm sure I'll be playing against you for practice at some point for that.
Oh yeah. I mean,
So.
I'm playing. Like I said, unfortunately, my meta in Michigan is struggling. Similar to everybody else, and I'm kind of on an island by myself up in the northern part of Michigan, where the most of the War Machine community that's still playing is in the southern part of Michigan. So, in order for me to get in-person games, I've got like an hour and a half, 2 hour drive basically to get games. So I am playing quite regularly on War Table just because like that's my availability of trying to get as many games as possible. So yeah, we'll definitely be getting some games. Hopefully with AJ2 at some point. We'll see. But
Yeah, eventually. Yeah.
Eventually.
Once I just got a really busy job, and my wife, we're both active duty, so she's gone and we have 3 kids. The problem is having twins. Don't ever have twins. That's the roughest part.
yeah, I can imagine that it would be pretty difficult. I would imagine. Jeez.
I remember this is super random story. I remember when you were like when you told us that you're like super excited. You're like knock them both out at the same time, done with kids, and then you had them, and you're like, this is the worst sleep schedule I've never had ever.
Yeah, it's awful. 0 of 10. The 0 of 10.
Oh.
But yeah, as the holidays wind down, work gets less stressful, and they're almost 2 now, so they're getting to be more stable.
Yeah.
But yeah, we definitely need to practice for Warfare Weekend. Definitely.
Yeah, I have to learn a whole new army, actually. And then you have to.
Yeah, Retribution will be a much easier to learn than Orgoth for sure.
Which I guess is a good thing. I learned what I'll be playing against probably, and I learned the thing that might be a little harder to play. I can kind of, and I know Rhett a little bit. Like I played Rhett at the end of Mark III, so like I know a little bit of what they do. But like I've never used Thyron. I've never used the meatball.
I believe in you.
Well, you'll be there with me, and our buddy said AJ has to beat JVM to defend my honor.
Yeah. Okay.
You can do it.
And now you can use.
Oh, I know.
You can do your army that got best painted, by the way.
Yeah, and then you got a how to paint book as a prize.
That was I understand why they did it, and this is I don't know where their prize pool came from. I don't know any of that. This is not a harp on them, but it is the weirdest prize to me. Like, cool, best painted army gets a book on how to paint. And I'm like, and it has a wet palette too. The wet palette is an upgrade because I have some cheapy one, but it's like, those seem like odd prizes for best painted army. Like, I don't know. That I don't want to be too rude on the prize pool because the prize pool like was really good. I know they had like they gave away 2 Magnuses, tons of Brine Blood defenses. But yeah, like, it was like I got the wet palette. I was like, doesn't you'd think best painted has a wet palette, right?
You never know.
I also saw a couple Invictuses given away too.
Yeah, what was that? Could have got one of those.
I know. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I couldn't take a good enough glam shot. Sorry. And then JVM won his second when he won the game. I was like, oh, he has 2 now.
All you had to do was just win.
I know. I was. We're gonna do a video of like the recap of what I should have done in that game. Kind of like a football top down, like this unit should have moved here, which would have led to this, which would have led to that kind of thing.
I mean, sure, that's helpful in some regards, but in a lot of situations, in a lot of situations too, though, like the decisions you make flow the course of that game. So obviously, if different things happen, then obviously your opponent changes their strategy too. So like then after a certain few moves, it doesn't matter anymore, right? It's all just the what ifs.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so hard to get into that what if war machine. Like, oh, if I did this, then you did this. Like that's not really helpful. And after a certain degree, because you're like, who knows who the board state is at that point?
Yeah.
I
think I was too, especially going into the early in that game when I kind of like gave up the left half of the board. I was too worried about his shooting of his Azrael, just like absolutely murdering me. And then that's why I was playing tentatively over there. And I was like, cool, I'll just dominate the right side. And that's what ended up happening. We both kind of just like stared at each other and left the half right of the map. And then I just didn't do a good enough piece trade to keep the scenario going. But that's all like things to learn.
But again, it's experience obviously playing the game. I mean, Jake has been, playing the game since its inception, basically. So,
it was definitely good playing with somebody to like learning at that. Like seeing him play is just like even when you lose, it's a learning experience of like, what did he do better?
Oh yeah, like I definitely am a very firm believer that you learn more from losing than winning.
As long as you're paying attention while you're losing.
Yeah, like you're definitely as long as you are able to like identify what you did wrong and try to correct it in the next game, like you're making progress.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did with the Cephalix games. I played like in the 2 Cephalix lists, I lost both of them, and then third day I won against Cephalix. And I broke the curse of Cephalix from my weekend.
Like I said, there you go. That's all you can hope for. That is tangible,
proof of improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then next weekend AJ's gonna bully me with army I just played.
Probably. Yeah.
Can't wait.
You'd be surprised at how good Sciron Retribution is in the Orgoth. You'll be surprised.
I'm just gonna play Sabrith. That's all I'm gonna play. I think. Gonna jam the games and learn it.
I mean, she's a lot of fun. She's definitely not a out of the box intuitive caster to play, but yeah, if you can get to a point and play her well, she is very rewarding for sure.
AJ smart. He'll figure it out faster than I could.
Oh, I have no doubt. But yeah, Berserk overtaking Jackals, pretty awesome.
That's the combo in Crucible Guard now. With the failed experiments now. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, or on the only difference is I think the failed experiments are what, Mat 7 or the Mat 6 as well.
Good question. They used to be Mat 7 because they had the weird I do +2/+1.
Right.
Crucible Guard. I'm looking them up right now.
That's my only like. And it's like I said, I have very few gripes about Orgoth, and
They're Mat 6.
when I go, well, yeah, when I go into a lot of like, oh, I wish that this happened. I'm like, nah, I can't even do that now. Playing an S tier faction for the first time, I can't really gripe about models, and Orgoth. But yeah, like they're them being Mat 6 is like, how many 7s can you roll in a lot of situation with Berserk Overtake? That's kind of what it comes down to. With that model, and if you roll a bunch of 7s, you're gonna have a good time. If you don't roll many 7s, it's gonna be kind of lackluster. But in those situations where you roll a bunch of 7s, you watch that thing Pac-Man across the table and kill like 10 models. It's pretty awesome.
That we kind of yeah, that kind of wraps up the weekly. This is usually the weekly game covers, but we kind of had Nova take over our games with that. And then did you order? What did you expect to see a lot of this weekend? I know you obviously Orgoth, Cephalix was there. I think I saw more Cephalix than I thought I would.
Cephalix is definitely surprisingly better than I initially gave them credit for. I've seen them a couple times on War Table, and like they have a couple interesting lists, but I had not seen them prior to like Magnus 2, obviously, really, or I guess Magnus 2 and Cephalix came out at the same time, but I did not see that like Texas Magnus 2 combo yet, and I saw it the first time obviously on the table at Nova, and that was like even at 75 points, I think Magnus 2 has and Invictus are surprisingly effective still at 75 points. I didn't know how possible that would be because obviously you have to take two cohort models still at 75 points plus having that 20-point tax. But Cephalix beasts are still so cheap that it's not really that difficult to field even at 75 points, which is good for obviously for that faction.
Yeah, I played against it. I only played against the Magnus version once. That was against Gatorman Pete. Fantastic game. I learned that my dice just hated me that day. Truly. There were so many times like he bullied Magnus into me. Magnus pressured like 2 units of Axers and a light jack, and my Axers are still alive. This was not on feet turn either. They had just had IR on them. And then I went to hit him back, and it was like 3 to hit. It was like I hit, and then it was like, cool, 3 for damage. And I'm like, all right, this is just nothing.
I mean, yeah, he's armor 22 because of Hellrot.
Yep.
I mean, the ridiculousness. Did you play against the Texas Magnus 2 version at all?
I think he played. Yeah, I played against that combo where he like energized telekinetic and then pushed him into my board. Like his threat's like 17.
Yeah, so that's 15 inches. Because of all of that nonsense. But the other ridiculousness is adrenal flooding Magnus himself, and he's like a POW 15 armor piercing attack.
Yeah, that happened. Magnus himself wasn't really in play. I keep mixing up calling the two.
Adrenal flooding Magnus is hot. Like it's so good.
Yeah, no, like Magnus himself did not get into play because he was kind of chilling in the back because I was threatening him a lot in that range, and I was just dealing with Invictus in my face the whole game, and that allowed him to position all his other stuff to just eat my other stuff pretty well. And then when I fired, I had what really was annoying is I had range on Thexus with he had no focus on him, and I had a shooty jack on him, and I had full focus, and I rolled a 1 for quad bolt thrower, and I was like, there it is. There's my dice.
I think I probably explained to you that if he had a monstrosity within 3 inches of him, you wouldn't have been able to kill him anyways.
Yeah, because sack pawn.
That sack pawn monstrosity. So,
yeah.
the quad bolt thrower. Oh, there was no monstrosity within 3 inches. Ooh,
Nope.
man, ooh, that guy's living dangerously.
It was just like he went in, and then I think he left him out, and then maybe didn't think I was gonna get that far up to clear the lane,
Mm-hmm.
and then just had a straight shot on him, and then just my dice said, "Dex is gonna live today."
I mean, that's still probably pretty good odds. Even if you roll a 2, you only need 8s to hit, and your dice off what? Dice off 2, I think, because he's a 15, 16.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's still pretty good odds. I mean, if you're forfeiting, if you're like I said, you're boosting to hit, you need 8s to hit, dice off 2. You're rolling 7s. I mean, on average dice, you still kill him. I believe he only has 15 boxes.
yeah.
Um,
It was also like the funniest, like because I went to contest the zone right at the end, and I smacked a blow thrall, and then I killed it, and then its damage killed my axer that was contesting. I was like, well, okay, okay, all right. Next time, don't smack the bloat thrall if you're trying to contest the zone.
yeah, that's one of those moments where like that's what I was talking about earlier, where you do something, you're like, note to self, don't
Smack.
do that again.
Because like on paper that shouldn't have happened. Like he spiked, but he just that damage roll went. It was like boxcars. And I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, for anybody out there you're trying to contest with a blow thrall, safer just to leave him alone. Stare at him, contest the zone.
And they're yeah, that cephalics in general are pretty strong, which is I expected to see more Ret as well, because I mean I know that how good Shadows is currently.
We only saw one Infernals player too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Infernals is very strong too, but they're one of those factions too where they weren't even all that popular in Mark III because their rules were like when they first came out, they were crazy oppressive, and then they took a pretty heavy nerf. So if you didn't like automatically buy into them right away, people weren't buying them in Mark III. And then when they got adjusted again in Mark IV, they became really good again. So
Is that why you
it's
bought them,
probably
AJ?
a lot of the availability of models. I think there's probably not many infernal armies floating around.
What was that? What did you say to me?
Is that why you bought the Infernals army because it was busted?
No, it was actually I wanted it was either them or Grimkin because it was right as COVID hit, and I had a coupon for basically 30% off and 30% off, and I guess the Privateer Press store let me stack them, so I just bought. I was either going to buy all of Grimkin or all of Infernals, and I was like, yeah, I'll just buy Infernals, and I knew how I wanted to paint them, so I just basically bought everything full FA for Infernals at 60% off from the store. So that's why I have Infernals. No other reason, really.
It was a good choice, I think. I mean,
Yeah.
I think Infernals, Infernals are definitely a little stronger right now than Grimkin, but I mean, they're both equally good in their own right. But I mean, as far as power level right now, Infernals is definitely pretty solid.
This has been kind of a hot topic. Not a hot topic, but been talking about community. Dusk falling down into the pipeline. Speaking of top armies, where do you think Dusk is going to settle?
You're talking like currently, or like when the rework and then eventually comes next year?
Oh, there's gonna be a rework.
I mean, I have no doubt that there will be a readjusting of some models next year.
Definitely, yes.
So
some people are saying they're awful. Some people are saying they're broken, and then you have, and it's usually it seems like you're either on one end of the spectrum or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I know because the funny thing is I know you guys had this conversation a little bit a while back, and so I know where AJ stands on it.
I think they're a strong A+, easy A+. That's where I think they are on the tier system.
I think I don't know about like A+. I mean, I think they're probably like B+ to A tier as far as like they will become stronger when the more obviously like living factions that emerge now, not when Brian Bloods becomes popular, when Chimera eventually comes out and becomes popular, I think that a lot of their uh better abilities shine into hordes, more so than into War Machine. um they're still held back a little bit by like just having a singular Matt uh 7 heavy, which is their character, which obviously is by far the best character heavy in the game currently from the Mark IV factions. Um so yeah, having Matt 6 Eidolons is rough in a lot of situations, but they're still strong in ways like their recursion mechanics are strong. Their void engine's still very good. Obviously, the race they make, being able to make and generate incorporeal solos every turn, is very strong. So they have a lot of like cool mechanics interactions, but like, so I think that the when their jacks start becoming focus efficient with like their being able to remove fury off of beasts, and the funny thing too is in the Setflix you can pretty much go infinite with an Eidolon into a Setflix
yeah.
I didn't even think of that. Oh my gosh.
Because when they take damage, they gain. You take it.
Yeah, because it's not a May. Like the Setflix model takes damage, it has to take generate a focus. So the Eidolon goes infinite into a Setflix horror.
Until it's dead.
Yeah, until it's dead. So it's one of the like I said, when those armies start becoming popular, the desk heavies actually start having a place. And you're not riding the back of the Cav and the Dreadbound units.
Interesting. Very interesting. I always liked that energy sword looking thing. That was my favorite weapon they had.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like it. I mean their guns are interesting as well, and like having heavies with flight is, I mean, obviously looking at Legion is super powerful, and flight in general in the game right now is very good. So having that as an option is never bad.
Cool. Well, I think we're running a little short on time here. I appreciate you coming on and giving us your input and all your wealth of knowledge. However much you say you don't have it, you do know a lot about this game.
Well, no, I appreciate that.
And that's gonna wrap it up for episode 24. Do you guys want to say quick little goodbyes? Where to find you if you want to be found?
I'm at home.
Okay. Not you. You're here.
Yeah, I'm always on Discord looking for games. So if anyone ever wants to play a game or pick my brain, you know where to find me. I mean, any one of those looking for game channels, I'll be there.
Of course, the LFG King himself. All right, thank you all for tuning in, and quick little shout out. Thank you guys for watching the streams of Nova. We'll be doing that more often for more events if we can. And on that note, have a good night, everybody. See ya.
Bye.